On this episode of River Tales, we'll sample a banquet of our region's finest foods, starting with an appetizer of bread and ending with delicious treats with a healthy twist. Then, we'll explore our four-legged friends menus at a pet supply store. We'll finish our episode with a little bit of entertainment by exploring the journey of a local television anchor. Stay tuned for River Tales.
My name is Bob Towner. I've lived in Cape Girardeau almost 18 years. I'm a retired pastor of the Episcopal Church here in town. Toward the end of my career, I took up bread baking. When I went on a sabbatical leave in 2011, I went and worked for 2 months in Scotland I was learning about hospitality, and I ended up in the kitchen. And there they baked fresh bread every day, and fresh scones and fresh sweets for dessert, and of all the things I learned how to cook, baking is what really got my interest. I went back as soon as I retired and worked for 7 months as the chief cook and baker in the kitchens of an international pilgrimage site in Scotland. So I really got pretty good at doing this. I bake two kinds of bread, what in America we call a sourdough. But what I do is I build that myself over a period of 6 days, just with flour and water, nothing else. And the rest is a gift of God. And at the end of that, it is leavening. The word that we use for it is levain. But it's leavening, and you put it in with the other flour, water, and salt. Simple. I can smell that this water and flour has been fermenting, and the yeasts have been causing fermentation. Bread making is almost like making beer. The bread I bake has a very hard crust. It's baked at almost 500 degrees. And it's got a very chewy crust and a very moist crumb. The crumb is what we call the inside. And the combination is wonderful. It's just... I also bake a bread that it takes 18 hours to make. And it has an overnight sponge, or I like to call it by another name. I call it poolish, because it reminds me of my dog, a poodle. But poolish has regular yeast in it, but it's allowed to rest overnight, and so it's starting to develop flavors, and you use far less yeast. Then you mix it with your flour, water, and salt, and kapow. Bread is a transformation. It proceeds along scientific lines. If you do certain things, you will get certain outcomes. And yet there's something magical or mystical about it too.
Giant City State Park is about 4,000 acres, and we're located in the Shawnee National Forest. The park itself sees a little over 1 million people hiking trails, riding horses, just visiting the park. The lodge itself, we serve about 130,000 meals, give or take, in our 10-month season, which is the beginning of February to mid-December. So the CCC was, the Civilian Conservation Corps, was a project instituted by President Roosevelt in the 30s, and Project 28C was Giant City Lodge. And the CCC was a project that put young men to work. They started the project in 1933 and it was finished in 1939, but it was all built right here and it was made for what it is used today as a restaurant. We were able to build more cabins. There were originally just 6 cabins that sit to the south of the lodge. And in '85, those were torn down, built back up on the same grounds, and then we added there's a total of 34 cabins on the property. All the timbers from right here, again, it's all white oak. They got it from right here in the forest. They sawed it down, put the axe marks in it. The only thing they did bring in were these big columns right behind me, and a local lumber company brought those in. They were originally smooth. The architect didn't like it, so they put the axe marks in it to give it some character. But the CCC boys who did it, they couldn't have done a much better job. I mean, a building like this, this is all original. We're sitting right here, and this building here is going to stay longer around than buildings built today. So in 1981, my family, the Kelly family, my grandpa and dad got the lease on the lodge, and we've had it since. So it was our 37th year of business, and I'm 3rd generation. I was lucky enough to be a part of it now, and just about my entire family has or does work here. So the lodge has always been a restaurant since 1939. When my family took over in '81, we were doing full menu every single day, and we realized the church crowd on Sundays was getting a little tough for the kitchen to handle, so Grandpa and Dad came up with the idea of the all-you-can-eat family-style fried chicken dinner. And so on Sunday afternoons, that's the only item available. You can get it 7 days a week, but that's all you can eat on Sundays. For our future, the lodge itself, I just want to keep it going. It's a staple in a lot of people's lives. A lot of people had graduation dinners here, rehearsal dinners, receptions. We have just big milestones in people's life they celebrate here. The CCC is the reason this is here. Without that program, without those guys, it's obviously the lodge is not going to be here. And countless family members, grandkids, nephews, nieces come in and say, yeah, my dad, my uncle, my grandpa, my great-grandpa worked on the lodge. And it's always really cool to hear that. Just because, this is living history. With a building like this, you have to treat it like your own house. Obviously it's a business that we run, but if you don't treat it like a home, then it will get run down. And that can happen, and it does happen, and that's a shame because buildings like this, with good upkeep and care, they're gonna stay around a long time.
So Faithfully Fed to me is a place where people can really understand and learn about really good food. It's savory and delicious and decadent and all these things first, and then it's healthy too. We are food with a purpose. We're not just this restaurant serving the food. We have this food that's made with natural, whole ingredients that feed their food, and they don't even know they're eating sweet potatoes. They don't even know they're eating beets in our cupcakes. So we have to get a handle on this, and so that's what Faithfully Fed's about. I was in oncology for many years, and I loved what I was doing. And all of a sudden, my dad became really, really ill. And I wanted to take care of him. So I moved him in, and I fed the man through a tube every 4 hours. And we would sit there day after day, and I would open up these cans of this smelly, synthetic, what they called food, that supposedly was gonna bring him back to health. And it's like, when did this become acceptable, that this was food? It wasn't even food. And I began to pray, well, what could I do about this? And I feel like I just started getting these nudges, and I saw then quickly how God really made a very divine path for me to move in this direction, to go back to His food. You know, it was my dad who really got all this thing started. He was a restaurateur. He had a business growing up. He had the pizza business. And so we grew up with him being gone all the time, the hard work, the dedication that it took for him to get his businesses off the ground. And he saw me through this process, and he would always tell me, don't give up. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever do, but it's also going to be the most worthwhile thing that you do. And he told me that he was real proud of me for what I did. I think of how he encouraged me all the time. You know, feeding him every 4 hours through a tube took a lot of time. And so there were a lot of moments where, you know, he would see me down, he would see me crying, he would see me, you know, really upset about how I would get worked up about this food and these kids and people, and then what he was eating, you know, these cans of this smelly synthetic food. And he said, you know, he said, you're just the one to do it. And I don't know that I believed that. I took this big leap of faith. And so, you know, I traded in my lab coat and put on a chef's coat. And his words still echo to me every day.
You know, Faithfully Fed is a restaurant and a cafe, but it's so much more than just that. And we take it very seriously. We're not just giving people food. It's kind of cliche, but we absolutely put love into everything we make and that we're giving to people. And we want it to fuel these people and make them feel good. And we want them to come in here and feel comfortable like they're at home. So to me, Faithfully Fed is home. I got recruited to play volleyball at SEMO, and at night it was really hard for me to adjust being away from home and living on my own and not being with my family, and I didn't know how to properly fuel my body, and I got to a really unhealthy weight and was at a really low point, and then it started turning around when I started you know, focusing on the things that were important. And from there, everything went up. And I started just loving everything about food. And I loved researching it, and I loved the nutrition. And it really changed my relationship with food. Before, it was kind of like more so, I can't eat that, I have to eat this. And now it's just like so much more freeing. And so from feeding the people to teaching the people, there are things every day that we're working on and trying to make available for everyone else.
I like Faithfully Fed because I know during lunch, I know it's a healthy option that I can get quickly on the go and get back to work nice and quickly.
What I like about Faithfully Fed is the inclusive nature of the restaurant. Not only do I feel welcomed just as a human being, but my special dietary needs are met every time I go in there. I'm vegan and I don't eat grains, and to find anywhere to eat is just like a hassle, and I can go to Tina or Doug in the kitchen or Meredith and say, you know, I have this specific need, and they'll kind of like, you know, tweak something they have on the menu already and make it so that I can eat it. So yeah, I really appreciate that element.
You know, I've just always believed that Faithfully Fed came from a place of healing. And what's interesting is that in the beginning I thought it was about healing my dad physically when I was taking care of him, that it was about his physical healing. As God has brought this thing into fruition, it healed mine and Dad's relationship. It healed me in many, many ways. And then now to see how God's using it to heal the community, it really does come from a place of healing.
Well, I opened the store actually back in 2008 as an online-only store. We sold cute collars, clothing, fun treats, and it wasn't until I met a lady here in Jackson, Missouri, who made dog food that I kind of got into the health and wellness aspect. The brick and mortar back in 2010. It's changed even since I opened in 2010. I have a lot more food than I originally had, a lot more health conscious items. We do try to specialize in made in the USA toys, treats, collars. We also do cat, and I feel like our cat section is probably one of the better aspects of the store, at least for cat people. We have found unusual toys, we've found good food. Well, this is the self-service dog wash, which was something else that my friends up in St. Louis said I better hurry and do before somebody else did. And it's actually a place where customers can come, pet owners can come and wash their own dog or cat. We've not had any other animals that I can think of. I think we have maybe had a rabbit once, but mainly dogs and cats, mainly dogs. And just for $15, we supply everything. Shampoo, conditioner, brushes, combs, hair dryers, towels, everything they need.
I love Stacy, the owner. She's amazing. She's super knowledgeable about anything to do with my dogs. I like the dog washes. I can bring them in and wash both of them. And they have really good pet food and fun kind of holiday stuff.
Consider ourselves to be pet nutrition experts. You're not going to find that from your veterinarian, and that's not a slam. I love my vet. I've been to her several times this week, actually. But they don't take a lot of nutrition classes. They don't have time. They're busy learning how to cure your dog of other things and do surgeries and important things. But we have taken the time. I've taken classes. I've trained my staff in how best to feed your dog and cat.
My name is Bethany Murley, and I've been here for about 5 years, and I help people make decisions on what dog foods to buy. I help them with what shampoo to do for their dog wash, just kind of help them in general with their pets. I really like the dogs when people bring their pets in. I like it when they start coming here from puppy all the way up until they're grown.
Because we are heavy into the nutrition aspect, people come to us because they've exhausted all their other resources. They're tired of giving antibiotics and steroids prescribed by their vet. They're tired of their dog or cat itching and scratching, not looking healthy. And what we do is we help them find the right food and possibly the right supplements so they can change all that. And the best aspect of it for me is when I ask somebody how their dog is doing on the food or cat, and they say great, and they've never seen them look healthier.
KFVS 12, proud to serve America's Heartland.
KFVS 12 has been the Heartland's #1 source for local news, weather, and sports for over 60 years. So it's no surprise that they have some of the best anchors and reporters to tell the stories that matter the most. One of those being Justin Fischer. I sat down with Justin and got a behind-the-scenes exclusive at what it's like to be a reporter and what inspired him to go into the news industry.
How did you end up in Cape Girardeau?
I went to school at Southeast Missouri State University. I ended up there because a lot of my friends came down here. So it was kind of like I don't know, I kind of followed them down. I really didn't have a plan of what I wanted to do.
Right.
But I originally wanted to be a dentist. So I came down here to kind of pursue that. Right. But my freshman year, I realized pretty early that me and science and math do not mix very well whatsoever. So then I went to SEMO for 4 years.
Gotcha, okay. Well, on that question, I know that you recently graduated from SEMO. Right. How did your mass communication department prepare you for anchoring and reporting the news?
Well, first of all, there's no specific thing you have to do. So some schools, if you want to do print journalism, you kind of have to focus on that. And at SEMO, they don't make you do anything. I mean, you have to learn how to write for, you know, AP style, which is really important, not only for if you're writing for a paper, but also if you're writing for, say, a TV station, because we have to do so many different scripts, and you have to write on the website, which is different than what you write on air. But you know, Dr. Buck, I'm sure you know her pretty well, is wonderful. I mean, if you come to her for any question or if you want to pursue an avenue one way or the other, she's going to make sure it happens. And as an example of that, Dr. Dufek, who I'm sure you don't know, he's not a big figure around here. She got me in contact with him, and he wanted to do kind of a on-air, legitimate newscast, if he could, using the Arrow stories.
Right.
And so we started doing that on Fox 23. It was pretty easy to get together. He really spearheaded it, and he really wanted to see not only myself and Brittany Harry, who was helping us at the time, but also the students who were helping us film it. So not only did they teach me how to write for a paper, which is like kind of the base level of writing for journalism. You really, if you want to be an anchor or a reporter, you really need to learn how to write for a paper first. And that's really the groundwork they taught me, and then pushed me to get into video when I decided to do that.
What inspired you to become a news anchor?
A lot of different things. So when I originally switched from wanting to be a dentist to wanting to do multimedia, I wanted to be radio before I went to doing video. It was one day my mom's like, just try to do video, see if you like it. I'm like, well, I don't know if I will. And I decided to do it, and ended up loving it. Coincidentally, my uncle is a morning anchor, and so I went down to his station. At the time, he was in Fort Myers, Florida. But I loved that he literally, and I quote, said, "I don't hate coming to work every day, and I look forward to it." I was like, that's definitely what I want to do. And he told me, what I have to do, you have to get out there and walk in the front door, basically. He's like, get in the front door and just say, I want to learn. And somebody somewhere is going to help you. It might not be the exact job that you're looking for, but somebody's going to help you get to where you want to be. And so he was a big influential part of that, because I get to see somebody in my family succeeding at now what I want to do. And that's kind of how I developed my career path right now. So I want to be a morning anchor. And so that kind of stems from him in a way, as well as my mom kind of pushing me in that direction.
Right. Who do you consider your idol to be in the news industry, and why?
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty easy. Not only is it my uncle, because he's kind of like the idea of kind of what I'm looking for in the next couple of years, but somebody I work with every single day, the epitome of KFES and the news gentleman kind of attitude that everyone would think of, Jim Burns. I mean, he is literally the nicest person you will ever meet, but he's stern. And if you mess up or don't do something that is probably right, he's going to tell you and teach you how to get better, and just give you that reinforcement. So I would probably say Jim Burns, being able to be around that kind of he has an aura that screams, let's be right, let's be quick about it, but let's be right. And that's really been teaching me a lot over the past 2.5 years that I've been working with him. And it's kind of transitioned me from just wanting to do news to wanting to anchor in the morning. So kind of having, Jim, my uncle, both morning people who I admire a lot has really helped me out.
Debbie Sullivan looks at what's left of what used to be her home on 127 in Virgins.
Feel very lucky to be alive.
When you report on devastating stories like that of the Perryville tornado and the spring flood of 2017, where people's lives are just ripped apart, devastated, how do you keep your composure to tell their story?
It's hard. That's really hard. As journalists, we're seen as people who are, unbiased. We look at it from an outside window. But you got to remember that every journalist is human too. So we all have feelings about what we're reporting on. First, the flooding. I was in Poplar Bluff, one of the levees broke, and we parked in a neighborhood where it broke. And we saw water just constantly coming up, and I was speaking to people who lived there, and it is hard not to kind of feel what they're feeling. But you got to remember that you're reporting to people, trying to inform them of what's going on in just that particular case. And you got to tell the story of what's going on, but that doesn't mean you can't, feel something about it.
Right.
So you got to make sure that you're reporting the facts and what's happening. I just talked to somebody, this is what they're feeling. And that kind of gives people the idea of what's going on there. Okay. In particular, I was in Virgins for the tornado, and we had that night before when the tornado actually happened, we talked to a homeowner. Her home was just leveled, and her and I think 3 other people were in the basement. And the house was blown over into the road, and it was bulldozed back over. And later on that morning, I was able to speak with her, and she was, everyone's alive, and we just got to rebuild. She's like, I don't know how we're going to do it. We're gonna have to rebuild. And I feel terrible because her house is gone, but the fact that she can sit there and go, my house is gone, everything I know is gone, but I'm safe, and that's the most important part. That really teaches you, I guess, a life lesson of what's really important in life. And then later on that morning, I believe it was her brother-in-law came to us and said, hey, I couldn't get a hold of my sister-in-law, and I saw that you were at her house, or what used to be her house, on the morning show, on the breakfast show, and that's how I knew she was okay, because they just couldn't get to her. They couldn't talk to her, couldn't find her.
This morning, you came on, and I got to see him, and that was, thank you. That was really important.
And so that really is probably the point where I thought, wow, you know, I feel horrible for these people, but it makes me feel good to know that I can tell people what's going on in the story that's happening.
As far as your career goes, what is your goal? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
What I'm doing right now, but on a more, you know, consistent basis of anchoring, because that's, when I filled in for the first time, I really fell in love. Like it's something that I love and enjoy. So in 10 years, hopefully working, you know, maybe here, I don't know, but on a morning show. Right now in my life, I want to work at a morning show. I don't see that changing any, but a morning show somewhere with a co-anchor, you know, having, you know, reporting good news and informing people, but also having some fun. And that's probably the difference between Nightside or, you know, the evening shows, the, you know, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. You get to have a little bit more fun in the morning, and like, particularly on Halloween, we actually had that T-Rex costume on air, right? And that was amazing. That was super fun. So
yeah, that was.
Yeah, morning show somewhere.
So anchoring
in a morning show somewhere. Right. Yeah.
What is your signature sign-off?
Okay, I know in particular what you're talking about. You're talking about the handshake, but that's just something that me and Brian McCormick do every weekend. Right. I don't really have a signature, but I know you're talking about the handshake with Brian McCormick. I don't know. We just started doing it as a, I don't know, we've been friends for a couple of years now, and we just started doing it as like a, hey, nice show, good job, you know, go home and get some sleep. So a handshake at the during the bum shot on the weekend breakfast show, I guess, is my signature sign.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
New this morning, the Kentucky State Police are reporting an investigation into a death. This house behind me in Vergennes, Illinois, was lifted off its foundation.
Justin Fischer has been on the scene for us for about 4 hours. Let's go to him now.
Yeah, Jim, they made that arrest just about an hour ago. This morning on The Breakfast Show, President Trump heads to Asia. The details on those stories and much more on The Breakfast Show. Live local now, Justin Fischer, Heartland News.